with your spiritual guides, you come before this council, and you are shown several lives that they recommend that you would choose from to develop your own spiritual capacities greater.
I want to slow down and understand a bit more, because when it comes to the research at the Division of Perceptual Studies, 3,000 documented cases of young children who remember their past lives, anyone who looks at this and really kicks the tires, so to speak, has to come away taking that seriously.
I think
now,
so.
The interpretation of it is, of course, more something that we can discuss. So when you were talking about how this evidence, which leads to a belief, these are reincarnated young children, they remember lives, they could have had no access to that information. Okay, I'm with you. But now you're saying there's data that says we choose, use the word data, that we choose our lives. And that I became a little skeptical there. And I was like, this seems like it's more a realm of positing a theory, but I'm curious how you view it.
Yeah. I think the work done at the University of Virginia department is critically important for putting reincarnation on the table with strong intellectual credentials. But personally, when I look at Ian Stevenson's magnificent work, it became clear to me that he doesn't have a rich, textured understanding of the entire cycle of reincarnation, what happens to us when we die, what the structure of post-mortem existence is, and what the deeper intentional purpose of reincarnation might be. And that's perfectly fine, because his job is to work close to the data. And the data which he's working with is data where you have two lives which are very closely enmeshed, so that the time interval between the death of one and the birth of the other is 2.5 years for his subjects. And the distance between the life place of the first life and the life place of the second life is approximately 50 miles. So that's faster than the population at large and closer than the population at large. So these are an exceptional subset of human beings who have this memory of their former lives. There is other work, Edith Fiore's work, and people looking at larger demographics, trying to give people experiences of regression and then trying to document where they went to and looking at the larger numbers. We find that people incarnate on average much more slowly and much farther afield than they do. Now, once you allow reincarnation on your maybe table, and you can then start looking at other bodies of evidence. You can look at the bodies of evidence that come out of the mystical traditions, the spiritual traditions, Vajrayana Buddhism's extensive, treatment of reincarnation, particularly in the self-consciously and reincarnated enlightened beings, tulkus. We can also look at the evidence coming from past life therapy, which I don't think is as strong a body of evidence as Ian Stevenson's evidence. But once Ian Stevenson's evidence is absorbed, it gives us permission, I think, to look seriously at the patterns that emerge in past life therapy work. And here I'm thinking particularly on the question you ask about choosing our next life. I'm thinking of Michael Newton's work, his excellent books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And Michael Newton was a therapist who got drawn into past life therapy. He was working as a past life therapist, hypnotherapist, and then he made a mistake one day, and he accidentally gave an ambiguous instruction, which his client ran with, and he began to realize that his client was describing what happened to him after his death in his previous lifetime. He did not think this was even possible, but he took eventually hundreds of people through a transition from their previous incarnation and death, and he began to ask them questions to explore and provide content to the nature of post-mortem existence. And he found that there is a civilization of spiritual reality. There is a civilization, there is a kind of almost, if you will, a university of education and going on in spiritual reality. And one of the things he found his clients describing is choosing their next incarnation in what he calls, following one client, the ring of destiny, where basically with your spiritual guides, you come before this council and you are shown several lives that they recommend that you would choose from to develop your own spiritual capacities greater. You don't have to accept any of them, and some people don't. But you can you see the early stages of your life. You see a sense of what the trajectory is. You don't see the whole of the life, but you get an experiential contact with what the themes of this life would be and who you would be spending this life with, so that we make a choice to choose the life that we have incarnated. And we do it in concert with the other beings that we have that we are incarnating with together. So it's not just each individual separately, but it's incarnating in groups, incarnating in patterns to support each other in our collective work.
I think the reason, Chris, that my questioning mind comes in. So I'm with you with reincarnation being on the maybe table. And I think the listeners to this series, there's been enough said. They've gotten there. But when it gets to things like the structure of post-mortem experience and the counsel that's there, my spirit guides that are guiding me, so many people say different things about it. Like they have different, it's not like there's some agreement across the board. 90% of the people say the same thing about post-mortem experience. So that's where I get confused. I don't have my own access to it.
Yeah.
So I can't say for my own experience. And when I hear a bunch of different things, I think, I don't know.
Yeah, that's understandable, isn't it? I think something similar happens in studying near-death episodes, that people do seem to have different experiences when they almost die and come back. And sometimes these experiences seem to be contradictory. One person has a near-death experience in which Jesus is the savior of the universe, only Son of God, and another one person has an experience in which he sees all the religious saints and saviors as simply manifestations of older souls on earth, and no one being superior to the other. But when you take all of the experiences together and you look at them critically and you begin to sift through them, certain universal patterns begin to emerge, patterns which Kenneth Ring has documented beautifully in a number of his books. And I think the same thing is true with reincarnation research. There is a wide diversity of opinion on what happens in post-mortem existence. But if you take the large body of data and you sort of sift out, really looking at it, the data I think which has the most value is data which has been gathered by professionals who are have a critical posture to their evidence. I think once again, you begin to find universal trajectories moving through the data, so that it's not simply a matter of he says, she says, and it's hopelessly chaotic. I think there are structural similarities. And once you place the reincarnation memories alongside the near-death episode memories, and you place that alongside some of the deep spiritual traditions, teachings on the structure of the bardo, and you place that alongside deep psychedelic experiences for accessing these domains, what you find is that these bodies of data do not diverge in 100 different directions, that there's actually a convergence of opinion at a deeper structural level. So I think it's important to be looking at that structural content.
Chris, we're connecting. I feel quite happy about how you're hearing my concerns and taking me step by step. So let's keep going here. What are the trends, you could say, the patterns, the identifiable places of agreement about the structure of post-mortem experience? And dare I say, what we can expect?
Well, I think we can expect to be surprised by how valued we are by the intelligence that's behind the entire manifest universe. I think, will be surprised by the love that's waiting for us, the unqualified acceptance of our being and the depth of that love that's waiting for us, and the intelligence that we are being returned to. Basically, death is a time of homecoming, a time of expansion, a time of remembering things that we forgot when we incarnated, a time of remembering our deeper identity, which I think of as our soul identity, a time of remembering the deeper texture of relationships, that the people that we are connected to importantly in our incarnate life, that those relationships have a history, a deeper history, which we can remember when we die. And so that the community of beings when we die is not a community of simply dead human beings, but they're a community of souls, and souls are 100,000-year-old beings, not 100-year-old beings. I think we can, I think what happens when we die is there is a period of gradual reintegration. We are escorted into this experiential territory gradually, carefully. We are assisted in this process. Some people need more remedial work than others. People who have given themselves over to violence and anger and injuring of other people, violating the fundamental oneness of life, often have to be taken back into oneness carefully and gradually, with a lot of attention to healing. Other people whose lives have been given over to compassion and generosity and service move through this transitional period more slowly. But eventually this transitional period ends, the process of digesting your life, digesting everything that happened to you, everything that you experience, what the near-death episode people experience as the life review, happens when we die. But eventually that entire digesting of your most recent life ends. You return to your deeper identity. It's not like Chris Bache doesn't just return to a deeper Chris Bache, but Chris Bache reintegrates with Chris Bache's soul, which is a much, much larger, extensive identity. And the community of beings in the afterlife is basically this community of souls, community of beings with deeper knowledge. One of the other patterns is that older learners help younger learners. It's a process in which it's just recognized that people are at different stages of their own spiritual and evolutionary development. Older learners help younger learners, and we tend to travel together in groups. It's kind of the most natural thing. Students do it at the university. They form relationships with people in their freshman year, and they tend to stay in touch through their entire cycle.